How to say no to your boss and your coworkers, how to say no to friends and family, and how to say no to yourself. That's the topic that we're going to discuss today. Welcome to 9 to 5. I'm Josh, and with me, as always, is my buddy Elliot. What's up, Elliot?
Hey, how's it going, Josh?
Doing pretty good. Trying something new there with a bit of an intro to tell people what we're going to talk about instead of just jumping into it like we normally do.
You lure them into a false sense of security, like we're gonna stick to the plan.
Yeah, I have nothing else scripted beyond that. So I know this is one that we've wanted to talk about. We've mentioned it in some previous conversations about how to say no and maybe some of our own shortcomings, at least my own struggles with saying no, because I tend to be a bit of a people pleaser. So I thought it'd be fun to bounce some things off of each other and talk through our experiences and maybe coach each other about the topic and see if we can learn something from each other.
Yeah, those scary two-letter words. Yes, you and I both as I would label myself a people pleaser as well. So maybe we can make some progress.
Before we jump into it, I just remembered something. Anybody that's been listening to our conversations this year knows that we are accountability buddies for each other. And I'm slowly crossing things off my list now that we're into almost the end of April here. I had needed to find a primary care physician. I needed to schedule a colonoscopy because I'm reached a certain age, and I need to find a dentist. And as of yesterday, I've got my colonoscopy scheduled. So I already have the primary care, got the physical, all that stuff earlier this year. Colonoscopy. These things, it's funny, they don't schedule them like next week. It's
No.
4 months out.
Yeah. No, the specialty doctors, I mean, take some time seeing like surgeons and everything around my surgery. Yeah, it was yep. That I think there was a lead time of I mean, I was trying initially to see like a specific surgeon, and I had already waited like 5 months and then found out it was going to be like another. I think it fell into when I was going to be on vacation or something like that, and then I finally was like, no, I'll take somebody else in the practice, please. So
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So I have continued to cross things off of my list. How are you doing with your list of items that I was supposed to hold you accountable for?
Well, I think my one list of items, so to speak, was working out. So I will say that a week ago I was sick and I didn't work out on that Tuesday. And so I've slowly been kind of getting back up to health. So I haven't been back on the workout train since then. And today would have been like, yep, all right, it's time to put pen to paper again. And I can say that I feel like my foot's been worse again now, like a week removed from regularly working out. So yes, need to immediately get back to it. And I know that, yeah, Dawn and I talked about whether I need to be doing my own physical therapy and other things, but yes, need that accountability buddy, a buddy Josh.
Sounds like Don's lending a hand there too with the
That's
accountability.
right. Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, don't tell yourself no too many more times when it comes to taking care of yourself there, Elliot.
Yes, absolutely. Is got to put that health first. Certainly.
Yes. All right. So jumping into it, talking about how to say no. I mentioned at the top here that I struggle with that because I feel like I'm a bit of a people pleaser, and it still haunts me to this day, Elliot, that I told you no a couple months ago whenever you asked me to help you with your breaks.
You don't say, Josh. I didn't rub it in your face at all either. So
That's true. Yeah, it's a running bit or joke at this point for our conversations, but I have to confess that a couple weekends ago, my buddy Greg was trying to do his breaks himself. And he reached out to me and said, I'm really struggling to get these couple of bolts off of my calibers. And I was wondering if you could help me out. Do you have any like tips or anything? And I'm like, well, I'm right down the street. I can we happened to be out getting some ice cream, and I said, I can run by and see if I can give you a hand. I get over there and I turned his wheels so that I could get a little more leverage on the breaker bar, and I was able to break the bolts loose. And he's, oh, I didn't even think of that. And so that was it. It literally took me just 2 or 3 minutes to do that. So I said, okay, so as you go through the process, just make sure whenever you put your caliper back on, your new brake pads, make sure you just pump the brake once or twice and then move on to the other one. And he's okay. So later on that evening, I get a text and he says, well, I swapped the first one out and pumped the brakes and brake fluid went everywhere. And I was like, oh, shoot. As soon as he mentioned it, I knew that I'd made a mistake where he had both wheels and calipers removed at the same time. So I'm like, I'll be there tomorrow to give you a hand. And he was going to have to replace his caliper and everything. Long story short, my Sunday was totally consumed with repairing his brakes because I felt that it was my fault that I gave him bad information. And then I was feeling guilty because I told my buddy Elliot no, and here I am helping my other buddy Greg like 7 hours on a Sunday to fix his brakes. So yeah,
There you go.
it's
I'll
karma.
continue to, yeah, karma. That's what happens when you tell Elliot no, is you get to burn a whole Sunday. So, no. Well,
Lesson learned.
proximity to Josh equals less resistance to no.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was funny. And I guess maybe backing up a little bit here too, if we go back to like your bosses and your coworkers, I don't have those things so much anymore now that I'm retired, but back in my youth, I would say that I was definitely a yes man when it came to work. That was my MO. Like somebody said, hey, you want to be a part of this project? Yes. Can you get this to me by Friday? Yes. All the things. And I felt like I was conditioned to that over a period of time because the bosses that I had were always like very, very encouraging to put yourself out there, get involved in things. That's how you get noticed. That's how you get promoted and all of that sort of stuff. So that kind of carried with me for quite some time. And I eventually got to the point where I was experiencing burnout and started learning about FI and all of that sort of thing. And then some of the conversations and offshoots of other people that are a part of this community, like Cal Newport, started listening to him and reading his books and really trying to figure out a way that I could be productive, but also not burn myself out, and the power of saying no and all of those things. So I started learning over time how to say no to my boss. And I remember I was using things like, well, if you want me to do that, here's all the other things that I'm working on. And my plate's pretty full. So what can we remove? Can you help me look through and decide what I can hand off to somebody else? And then it was usually pretty well received. And that's how I got the ball rolling when it came to telling my boss no.
Yeah, so I'm probably closer still to the way that you acted in your junior years. I'm still very much a people pleaser when it comes to work. However, I would say in the last couple of years, I have, for lack of a better term, I have become a worse employee. And I'll say why. And try and not turn this into Elliot's tangent story here, but is that I think just in general, in most companies, people that want to perpetually climb the ladder, type A people, aren't necessarily rewarded for going that extra mile. And I'll put this back in the perspective of you or myself in the past as people leaders. What's the best type of employee you have is just that workhorse. They'll always be that yes person. Whatever you hand them, they'll go do the work. And then what's their reward for doing it is you go hand them something else. Whereas the person that's not your strongest performer, right, is they get handed a task, they do it. It takes them however much time, and then you still hand them another task, generally right behind it. Now, you may be saying, well, yeah, but the person that got more work done says, yeah, they're up for the promotion or whatever else. But I don't always see that lines up with how being the most efficient isn't necessarily how you are promoted. It is working on the right work, getting it done in a timely manner. And like you said, being able to effectively state that my time is a finite resource. What is most impactful for me to actually work on and complete, as opposed to just being go, 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 burn the candle at both ends type of employee. And it's ironic because I actually had this conversation with a coworker today, and I said that in the last, let's call it year and a half, 2 years, I feel like I've been that C plus employee because I wasn't feeling the incentives on the other side of the coin. And my quote unquote rewards being my end of the year review is pretty much the same with very little deviance from years where I was putting in A plus plus effort. And so trying, like you said, really trying to frame it in a way of, hey, I hear that this is important to you. How can we essentially align our objectives is I want to deliver quality work and you want that quality work done. So you have to tell me what the priority is.
Yeah, and it's definitely quality over quantity. I remember seeing a lot of people that were involved in the quantity of things, but they weren't necessarily providing a high level of quality. They were involved in all the things, and then they were getting things mixed up, or they were saying they were going to do something in this project, and then they would fall short. And then they were still over here on this project, and they were skipping meetings or unable to attend or whatever the situation was because they were trying to do all the things. So they were high on quantity, but low on quality. And that's something that I think when I had a lot more energy whenever I was younger and a lot more drive, let's be honest, I was able to manage those things and be able to have the quantity and the quality. And then I had a certain level of speed along with that. It was funny. I don't know if you've experienced this, but whenever I came along, I was definitely one of, if not the youngest person in my department at once upon a time. And I could work circles around the folks that were next to me that were much, much older and probably weren't as used to like working with computers and programs and learning new things and all of that sort of stuff. And it just came pretty easy to me. And I found shortcuts and all of that kind of stuff. And I remember that I could get the same type of work done at a much faster rate and then be able to have time available to do something else. But as time went on, I became the guy that was maybe a little bit slower, and my peers that were younger were coming along and picking up whatever the changes were that we were introducing. They were being able to absorb those much quicker and could work circles around me. But then I had to pivot and learn that, okay, now I need to focus on the quality side of things and start saying, okay, what is the most important, whether it's from my boss's perspective or from the organization's perspective. Let's focus on that thing and play defense against all this other stuff. So that's where I started to really develop that ability to say no to my peers, my coworkers, people that were asking to have my attention for something, and really start to focus on those things that were of high value. And I still ended up getting pretty good reviews. And in fact, I've mentioned before, I got 2 promotions in my last 3 years without even trying. And to a certain degree, I may regret like the last one just because it was such a stressful situation. But it was ironic how that happened going back to the beginning of my career versus the end of my career, and the difference there and how I was the guy that was always trying to be involved in all the things. And then eventually, like you said, I become maybe, I wouldn't say a worse employee, but a different version of myself from what I was many years earlier.
Sure. And of course, I say worse somewhat jokingly. But yeah, I mean, you become that seasoned veteran, right? Is you realize that careers generally, now I will say Phi adds a different element to this, but most people realize later in their career that they're running a marathon. They're not running a sprint. And so every every fresh out of college or entering the workforce individual is trying to show that they can be that go-to person. They're moving at a near frenetic speed, in some ways can be haphazardly. You try and mix that quality and quantity at the same time. But then as you move along that career progression, yes, you start to realize that, yeah, if I can get one or two things done exceptionally well, nothing else matters. Like your management will be exceedingly happy that you made great strides in things that actually matter.
And I don't have a whole lot of experience with very many companies. I only worked for the one, but I definitely saw the evolution over time because early on it was, like I mentioned earlier, get involved in all these things. That's how you get noticed. That's how you build rapport and trust and all the buzzwords early on. And then as time went on, it was funny. I was thinking back to this was right after COVID, or at the height of COVID, I should say. There was a real emphasis on mental health and well-being of employees. Did you work for the same company that you do right now during COVID, like back in 2020, 21?
Not.
Okay. So at my company, in my role, we were considered non-essential. So I worked for a manufacturing facility, and there was a couple hundred people there, but there was probably 5% of us, 5 to 10% of us that were more like non-essential. We had desk jobs, so we had to work remotely. And then there was much larger groups within the organization that had to do the same. And there was a real push for a brief period of time on mental health and well-being. And my boss did a really great job of looking at all these different resources. And one of the things that came along was LinkedIn Learning. I looked it up today, and you have to have a subscription or membership or whatever to be able to take these courses, but they offered one on how to say no. And it was really interesting because I had never experienced that in the workplace, of something that my employer was providing as a resource for the employees on how to say no. And it was like very refreshing and very eye-opening at the time. Now, I feel like that went by the wayside within a matter of 6 months or so, but it was a very short period of time where they were really trying to do all the right things. And it was probably across the board for many industries, but I just remember taking that course and being like, oh, yeah, all this makes sense. And the things like how to say no without saying no was
Right.
one of the, which I feel like I still struggle with a bit. I struggle with just saying no in general. That was really refreshing back then. And then I feel like that just disappeared over time.
Yeah, that long lost COVID era, right? It's very funny that you say that we all just, I mean, of course it is now 6 years ago, and it does seem in some ways forever ago, but how many employers are I mean, like a benefit that clearly I still receive in that I am a hybrid worker is a holdover from the era of COVID, and how many, I would say, employers are trying to roll back certain things that I think were great learnings and great opportunities to make strides for both employees and employers. And it's interesting to see how many of those things continue to be kind of rolled back and clawed back. So,
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. I got to the point probably within the last 5 years of my career where I was really good at saying no. I felt like I said no more than yes. And there was a moment, or there was a period of time when the CEO, we actually changed CEOs, and the new one came in, and we were still in remote work situation, those of us that were not essential employees. And it was not enforced. We had the flexibility that we could go on site if we wanted to. But she came in and she sent out like a company-wide memo that said, we no longer need the social distance. Everything can be basically back to normal. And those of you that are still working remotely, we invite you to come back on site. And I, at first, I was very accustomed to and used to working remotely 5 days a week. And at first I was frustrated by it. And then it was at the time where I was a people leader, manager of a couple different groups, and I was getting peppered with concerns from people in the group. And I read it a couple times, and then I thought, "Oh, I'm going to interpret this in a different way. She's saying, she literally said, we invite you to come back."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to decline that invitation.
Yeah. The answer to your invitation is no, thank you.
And I did. I pushed off on it. I told my team and I told my boss at the time, I'm like, we're doing great. Everybody's fine. We have a close relationship. There was a few people that did enjoy going on site on occasion to meet face to face with people. But by and large, the majority of us worked remotely a good 80% of the time. And he was okay with that. And we were able to continue that under the radar until they eventually did come through with a mandate that said you need to be on site 3 days a week. But it never got to the point, and I don't know if it's changed by now, but it never got to the point where they were tracking anybody or looking at badge scans. At least they never discussed it in any way. So there was still a cohort, a group of us that were like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. I can't for whatever reason. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I don't really care.
People leading the resistance.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say so in that scenario. Now, obviously, you had a positive experience that your boss allowed you to do that. But how do you navigate saying no when it does conflict with whether it's social expectations, friends, family, workplace? How do you feel about that?
I think friends and family is really the hardest. That's the area that I feel like if I'm saying no to somebody, I'm letting them down.
That's what it feels like, right? So Josh, really, what was your reason that you didn't want to come change my brakes? I mean, that's what we really want to know.
I believe I gave you an excuse at the
No,
time that I see now you're making me
I
question myself.
yeah, no.
Do try to, if I do have to say no, I usually do try to give some type of context so that in my mind, I feel like I'm softening the blow. Like somebody's really looking for my assistance and help, and whatever it might be, or just my friendship. And I'm telling them no, to me, it feels like I'm, again, letting them down. So I always try to make sure that I say, well, I can't now. And I think I may have even told you, I probably can't within the next several weeks, but as my schedule frees up and I don't have these whatever it was, houses to work on or whatever at the time, I should be able to. And you're like, oh, that's okay. I get it. I'll just take it to the shop. We don't want to wait a number of weeks. We want to take care of it now. That was fine.
It's the same way with how I felt telling you no when you invited me to go on a hike with you and a couple of our buddies. So yes, I know what you mean. Is as a fellow people pleaser, you're like, yes, you feel like you have to give some justifiable reason of why this doesn't work.
But in that situation, it was an easy one that you had to work. It was on a work day. It was in the morning. I tried to give the old just play hooky or something like that. And you were like, I need to do these things. I have limited time off or whatever. And I totally understand that. And that's a fine excuse. Not that you need an excuse, but it was one that I feel like you shouldn't have to justify that one.
That's right. Well, solid Josh Elliot therapy session that we're having here. But
over the years, there's been a lot of talk. This quote comes from, I think, Derek Sivers, where he said, if it's not a hell yes, it should be a no. Have you ever heard that one?
I have.
At one point in my life, I tried to adopt that philosophy, and I even told some of my friends about that, and they kind of chuckle out of it. Like, they're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then over a period of time, I thought to myself, that does not work for me. And part of the reason is, I'll give you an example. I got a couple of friends that I don't see too often, and they're into a certain style of music that I don't necessarily listen to on a daily basis. It's like European prog rock. And I've known these guys forever, like decades. And we don't get a chance to hang out too often. But whenever they go to a show, they've started inviting me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to join that. Even though I don't know the band, I don't know the music, any of that sort of thing. It gives us a chance to get together, hang out, have dinner beforehand, catch up. And I usually end up having a good time, even though I'm not familiar with the band or anything like that. So I think that there's some times when it's good to say yes. And then there's times where I find myself in a situation where I say yes, and then I think that how can I say no? How can I back out of this? That's another thing that I struggle with and I don't want to be that guy that's wishy-washy, where I say yes, and then I've had this happen to me a lot where people just say, oh, I forgot all about that. Oh, I didn't look at my calendar when I said yes to that. And I have this other thing going on. And I don't want to be that person. So I don't want to, again, let somebody down whenever we're planning to do it. And this is no shot at you, Elliot, because I know you said yes to something and then had to say no. So I'm thinking through that as I'm saying that.
Think of that particular instance, but I know what you mean. Yes, it is. You and I are so similar in that regard, is that it feels, like I clearly take some sort of pride in like the dedication. If I say yes, like I will be there. I am very loyal in that regard, and it means a lot for me to say that I'm going to do something. Now, couple that with people pleasing and FOMO, and maybe you have a problem that you really need to practice the word no. But if I say I'm going to do something, like it will irk me very strongly if I have to turn around and say no. So I know what you mean.
This is my own shortcoming, or whatever you want to call it, that I know your lifestyle and your situation is that you're currently still employed full time. You have 3 young kids. You're juggling a lot of responsibility and time commitments. Then I look at myself on the other end of the spectrum, where no longer have the full-time job. Kids are all grown. I definitely have more free time. So I project that vision onto what other people see of me. And at one point, I think early on in my early retirement here, I tried to put myself out there to people, and even yourself. I really tried to say, hey, I'm available. Let me know if you need anything. And I was getting on some level of people were saying, hey, yeah, come help me with this, come help me with that. And that was great. It felt like almost a volunteer work or giving back. And then as things settled down, I mentioned before that I got a little bit burned out on maybe stretching myself too thin and committing to too many things. And then over time, I've had some of those same people come back and ask me, can you help with this? Or I have some friends that live in a different state, and one of their parents still lives here close to me. And I had told them, hey, if she ever needs anything, I'm 10 minutes away. I can be there to give her a hand. And she reached out to me a couple weeks ago and she said, I'm looking to get a fence in my backyard. I have all the materials. Do you think you could put in a fence for me? My first reaction was, sure, I'll be there. Let me take a look at it. I don't know why that was my first reaction. And instead of really, my first reaction should have been something more like, I'm not sure, let me get back to you. And instead I went over there the next day and I took a look at it, and I still couldn't tell her no. I knew that it was going to be a much bigger job than I was willing to take on. And at that point, I said, let me give it some thought. And I let a couple days pass. And even though I knew, like, I'm going to say no, I still hung on to it a little bit. And I finally did tell her, yeah, it's a pretty big job and I've got a lot going on right now. I don't think I can handle it. And she said, okay, that's no problem. I'm going to keep looking for somebody that can do this. And it bothers me a little bit because I feel like I'm not only letting her down, I'm letting my friends down who are 3 states away, who can't come help their mom with this situation. And it's a certain level of guilt for whatever reason. It's just, I don't know why. That's just
Sure.
something that I'm needing to work through.
Of course. And let me absolve you of your sins, Josh. Like a fence, it's not like a fence, part of a fence fell and broke or something like that, where it's a repair job. It
Yeah.
is obviously constructing a whole fence is not your run of the mill, like, oh, can you help me with a light bulb or, whatever it is. So feel okay about considering your own needs and your own time. But I mean, I can understand that it's hard to come to grips with just saying no to people, and like you said earlier in the show, really those family and friends is where it's always going to hit harder. Is people that we actually care about, saying no to them is that much harder.
It would be interesting to get this perspective from other retirees. It's probably something that I need to ask more of. And if anybody is listening to this and has experienced this, where they get into this situation in life where they have more time and then they're finding themselves needing to say no, if it's they're dealing with guilt, or if some people might be able to just go, yeah, no, I can't do that. It's I just I haven't fully developed that muscle quite yet. Still a work in process, but it's one of those things that I've learned in early retirement, is that I want to be helpful, I want to be available, but then how do I set boundaries and limits?
I mean, we are certainly all works in progress, and yeah, sounds like you're even more proficient in the art of saying no than I am at this current juncture. So
Well, that's good to hear.
that's right. I will happily learn from you in that regard.
So I said at the top that one other category and person that you should say no to is yourself. How do you say no to yourself? And really that just comes down to exercising self-discipline. This is a category that I feel like I also struggle with, where now that I have all this time and I have all this kind of creative energy, I find myself always looking to different opportunities for self-improvement or for creative pursuits. And even sometimes I will see opportunities for side hustles or just ways to make extra income. And it's interesting that whenever we've talked about the list that I had, and some of the items that I had on the list of how I was going to spend my time was some form of part-time work. I guess you could really say this podcast falls into that category, because this didn't come along until several months into the early retirement, but I still struggle with, I will listen to other podcasts or read books or see YouTube videos where I get an idea. I see somebody talking about something and I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that. I should look into that. I should add that to my list. And sometimes it's something to do with real estate. Sometimes it's something to do with diet and exercise, or maybe it's just even like content creation, podcast type stuff, or even the YouTube side of things. And then I'm writing things down. I still use Cal Newport's time block planner, not so much as a strict time blocker, but more so as a way to keep some notes throughout the week, and then just have a general idea of, here, this 5 hour block, I'm going to be working on this house. This 2 hour block, I'm going to be meeting with Elliot to record the podcast. And then I put whatever other things that I need to work on throughout the week. But I will catch myself making notes in there about these things that I see, and then I have to go through and go, no, you don't do that. I'm scratching these things off. Not that I completed them, but it was a bad idea. Stop putting more stuff on yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Complete tangent, but have you looked at the market recently, Jeff?
I glance at it every day, to be honest with you.
Really? Okay. So
Yeah.
I do not. I check it literally pretty much whenever I'm going to do my monthly true up for whatever. And Dawn came up to me and she's like, have you seen the market? No, it's not the first of the month. Like, and she's like, yeah, it's kind of like on a tear right now. And so random wild hair, I went and looked and I was like, wow, it is on a tear at this exact moment. And just seeing, even in our specific situation, I was like, man, that made way more money than I expected, and I didn't lift a finger by doing it. So I bring up all of this to say, despite any number of side hustles and other things that you can do, as far as monetary adventures, you don't have to do it. Is like your money will take care of itself in the world, in our Philandia here.
I absolutely know that. And I tell myself that all the time. And I'll have conversations with Lori about that too. And I'm like, we don't have to earn any more money. You can quit working now. We'll be fine. We have ways to get at that money. We can draw from our investments. Things are going great. We don't even spend enough to be able to run out of money. And yet I think it's a little bit of a entrepreneurial itch that I have, that I see an opportunity, and we've talked about it before, the things that I still struggle with, even where I value my time in this kind of upside down way of looking at it. But we're talking about putting a water heater into the property that I'm currently working on because it's old and I know that it would just be peace of mind. So I'm looking at, okay, a new water heater is like $600. I know how to do it. Then I thought, well, it's going to take me probably half a day to install it. Then I looked at, can Lowe's install it? Well, of course they can, but they're going to charge like an extra $600. So I'm doubling my price. And we were talking about it last night, and she said, well, what is that worth to you? I'm like, I feel like I'm paying myself $600 to
do whatever you want to do. Well, yeah. So see, I see it the other way is, yeah. What's a day worth to you anymore?
Yeah.
It's a tough thing.
And I anchor to past money or the value of money from how things were years ago, where I used to think, if I could get $100 a day to do the side hustle stuff that I want to do, like that's a pretty good income over a period of time. And $500 a week, or however you want to look at it. And then I adjusted that over time a little bit, but I'm still stuck in that mindset to where, yeah, my time is worth like $100 a day, which I know is very unfair to myself, but that's what I'm still anchored to. And I need to unravel that and look at it from a different perspective of $600. Yeah, if I pay them to do that, they get it done. I know it's done right. I know that if they run into problems, they're going to be able to solve that problem without me running back and forth to Lowe's to get different fittings and all of that sort of thing. So still debating on what I'm going to do with that situation.
Well, I volunteer as tribute to break you of that habit. I'll make you come to my house for $100 a day until you say that you are no longer interested. We'll practice this power of no.
Yeah, I guess that would get old. Well, I don't know. That might be fun. Am I paying you or are you paying me?
I'm paying you.
Oh,
I got
okay.
projects out the wazoo.
Oh, I can't just come hang out with your kids over
No,
summer?
no. Yeah. I mean, hey, that also, I think, probably meets the requirements. So, yeah, trust me, the going rate for babysitters is you're selling yourself short of $100 a day.
I bet. What would it cost to watch 3?
I mean, it's so I will say the cheapest that we have ever had a babysitter at is $10 an hour. And that's because this was like their first babysitting job ever. And they're on a younger individual. I would say most like pro babysitters, are in the 20s.
Is that per child?
So, I mean, it kind of depends. Like, obviously, if you use a paid service, yeah, I'm sure that it's 20 something an hour, and they probably do increment per child.
Yeah. So 8 hours would be way more than
Yeah.
$100. All right.
There, I mean, we can have the summer camp of Josh.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't last too long.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right.
All right. Well, do we have anything else that we want to say in our power of saying no?
No. I don't think so. I think I covered everything. It's still definitely a work in progress, and it's something that I need to continue to get more comfortable with. And just, I think I was reading through some of the AI stuff, and some of it's really cheesy on how to basically say no without saying no. And it's not the language that I would use, but I know that what I need to do is one of them is like the sandwich. So start with an appreciation, give your refusal, and at the end, wish them well and or some sort
Yeah.
of alternative.
Yeah.
And
The yes, no, yes.
yeah, it is, some of them are pretty cheesy, but I probably do need to continue to practice that in some regard, whether it is with my family or my friends, and just be okay with it too. Sometimes I have a little bit of regret, like we talked about in a recent conversation, how we have that FOMO of if we say
Yes.
no. I'm wearing the economy t-shirt, and I said no to economy this year, and I was okay with it. And Lori kept asking me as we were getting closer to the date, are you afraid you're gonna miss out on spending time with your friends? And I was like, no, I think I'm okay with it. And I never had any doubt or regret.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. I know that I mentioned on the episode last we chatted about going to, let's say, the case studies less frequently. So I'm going to have to practice saying no in those regards as well. But I hope to maybe translate that into other opportunities to say yes to hopefully doing maybe more fun activities with a smaller subset of those same.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's always a trade-off. If you're saying no to one thing, it gives you an opportunity to say yes to something else.
A hell yes, right?
Perhaps.
Well, very good. Until next time, Josh.
Sounds good. Thanks, Elliot. If anybody has any feedback for us, they can certainly email us. We have links and everything in our show notes. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can leave a comment there. But yeah, that's all for now. Talk to you later,
Thanks.
Elliot.
Talk to you later.